Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most influential horror games of all time. It essentially created its own subgenre of sit and survive horror games, and it spawned a massive franchise of games, books, merch, and even an upcoming movie. Eventually. And even despite some missteps, FNAF is still a pretty solid series in my opinion. Or at least, that's what I've always thought. Today we're going to test that theory, and take a look at the original Five Nights at Freddy's, and see whether it still stands up today, or if its age is starting to show. The story behind the creation of Five Nights at Freddy's is quite well known at this point, but I still want to cover it as I still think it's a cool story. Scott Cawthon, the creator of FNAF, started making games in, shockingly, the 1990s. However, the FNAF story doesn't start until the creation of a game called Chipper & Sons Lumber Co. in 2013. The game was blasted for having characters that looked like creepy animatronics. Scott ended up deciding to make one final game before giving up on game creation, and while he had other ideas for a final game, he ended up deciding on making a survival horror game themed around animatronics and security cameras. After a bit of working on the game, Scott made a Kickstarter campaign for Five Nights at Freddy's, and in the end it raised a total of $0. Scott didn't let this deter him though, as he released a demo on IndieDB on August 3rd, 2014, and the full game came to Steam on August 20th of 2014. But it wouldn't be until Yummy Mash played it on the 10th and Markiplier played it on the 12th that the game exploded in popularity. I remember hearing about FNAF through, oddly enough, DanTDM playing the Minecraft map version of the first game way back prior to the release of FNAF 2, and soon after that watching the first game theory video in the series. Yeah, that's right. I'm a veteran. Outside of that, there isn't much to say. I've played through and beaten FNAF 1, 2, 3, 4, and Sister Location before, but that was a long time ago. But for now, it's time to look back and re-beat Five Nights at Freddy's. Right off the bat, Five Nights at Freddy's is a very unique and honestly really fitting title screen. Freddy is front and center, or to the right, cloaked in darkness, and the entire title screen has the same static effect the cameras have in the game. Starting a new game presents you with a newspaper clipping. Now, considering nobody reads a newspaper anymore, this clearly indicates this game takes place in 1993. But it also introduces us to our job. We're the night guard at a Chuck E. Cheese style restaurant. They also note something about not being responsible for, quote, injury/dismemberment. Huh. Anywho, time for the first night. And oh boy, if there's one thing this game does really right, it's making a great atmosphere. The atmosphere in this game is genuinely unsettling, while still feeling like a kids-themed restaurant. The cobwebs everywhere, the flickering lights, and the overall darkness just works really well together to make this place that's supposed to bring happiness instead bring fear and uneasiness. There's also other touches, such as how you can hear footsteps whenever an animatronic moves, you can hear Freddy and Chica making noise in the kitchen when they're in there, and also whenever Bonnie or Chica is in your room, you hear, What the fuck is this? Opening up the camera, you're greeted by 3 of the 4 main animatronics, Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, and Chica the Chicken. I don't know why Freddy is named differently from Bonnie and Chica, but I don't know, I didn't make the game. The 4th animatronic can be found in Pirate's Cove, and his name is Foxy the Pirate. Again, I don't know why there's a name difference here, like why are Bonnie and Chica named after their animal species, but Foxy is named after his profession, and Freddy is just Freddy Fazbear, but I don't know. You have 2 doors on either side of your office, and as the guy on the phone suggests, you need to use them to keep something out. And while that something isn't clear initially, it becomes much clearer either through the rest of the phone call, or through the fact the animatronics start to move towards you. In case you somehow don't know what Five Nights at Freddy's is all about, and you somehow haven't figured it out yet, man, you need to get out more. But other than that, you have to prevent these animatronics from getting into your office. Otherwise... yeah, that's not good. It's functionally very simple, but it works shockingly well. The jump scares here are also pretty good, especially considering the fact this was the first game in the series. They don't look cheap, as a lot of fan games at that time looked like, and they also work really well. Outside of that though, the gameplay isn't very deep, but I think that's kind of the point. the gameplay isn't the focus here, but rather it's the atmosphere and story. And hey, speaking of story, at the beginning of every night, you get a phone call from someone. He's never given a name, so the community just refers to him as the phone guy. These calls do a great job of telling the player what to do and what to expect, without sounding like just basic exposition. A neat thing about these calls is that they actually set up a lot of things that became major parts of the series, most notably the Bite of 87, which is brought up in the very first phone call, and is still a talking point to this day. There is one minor thing about these phone calls I don't really like though, and that's the fact that if you die and restart the night, the phone call does not replay, which may not seem like a bad thing, except for the fact that if you don't hear important information from the call, whether it be through you dying, or you just not listening, or you muting it because you're an idiot, you're screwed, because you can't hear the phone call unless you restart your entire game in order to hear it. Now, what about the gameplay, you may ask? To which I answer, I mean, it's okay, but I'm gonna be honest, it gets a tad bit old after a while. However, that's not to say the game is easy by any means. In fact, I think the difficulty curve in this game is pretty good. By the time you get to the later and much harder nights, you should already have a good grasp on what to do and how to deal with situations. And at least for me, I beat the first 5 nights in less than an hour and a half, so it wasn't that bad for me. Something odd I did encounter though is that Foxy attacked me on night 1, which isn't supposed to normally... It's me. What does that mean? Yeah, there's a lot of weird things you start to notice if you pay close enough attention to your environment. Stuff like posters in the hallways changing, the animatronics in the back room looking at you, Freddy staring at you, it's me plastered pretty much everywhere, even in these hallucinations, and even these newspaper clippings randomly appearing in the corner. We'll get back to these in a bit, don't worry. However, the most infamous Easter egg is undoubtedly Golden Freddy. Remember how I said earlier there's only 4 animatronics in this game? Yeah, I kinda lied, there's actually 5. Golden Freddy is the secret 5th animatronic in this game. He's extremely rare, however, and the only way to encounter him in-game is to have his poster randomly appear in the West Hall corner. There's only a 1 in 100,000 chance of this happening every time you pull up your camera, however. Outside of that, there's also a 1 in 10,000 chance that Golden Freddy's jump scare will play instead of returning to the title screen when you die. There's also this screen of an eyeless Bonnie that can randomly appear whenever you start up the game, whenever you die, or when you beat nights 5, 6, or 7. And speaking of which, yeah, this game's title is a lie. There's actually 7 nights in this game, not just 5. Now to be fair, nights 6 and 7 are more extra content than they are main game. While night 6 is your standard run-of-the-mill night, just harder, night 7 is a custom night, where you get to set the difficulty for each of the 4 main animatronics separately. The hardest difficulty being 2020-2020 mode, nicknamed 420 mode, later named Golden Freddy mode. Now, this used to be considered quite the challenge. However, nowadays people have figured out a system that allows pretty much anyone to beat it pretty much first try. In the end, it only took me around like an extra 30 to 45 minutes to beat nights 6 and 7, adding up to a total of around 2 hours to beat the entire game and everything it had to offer. When you get down to it, FNAF 1 is pretty short. In fact, all of the first few games are short. However, this isn't really a bad thing. It isn't even like this is a fully priced game that's like $40 or something. In fact, this game only costs $5, which I think is more than worth it. Even outside of the gameplay, there's a lot to grab onto. Most noticeably, the lore. The lore is probably the most famous aspect of the entire franchise, with each new game adding more and more layers to it, leading to massive communities coming together to try and piece together what it all means. And while the lore is pretty...
Gregory is a robot.
...stupid nowadays, looking back, it's neat to see where everything started. The most lore this game has is the mystery of Golden Freddy, what happened to the phone guy, and he dies. And most importantly, the murder of the children. Remember how earlier I brought up newspaper clippings that can randomly appear in the east hallway corner? Yeah, this is where they come in. Their job is to explain the lore behind why the animatronics act the way they do, as well as lay the groundwork for where the lore of the rest of the series would build off of. And when you look at it that way, it's quite remarkable that we started here, as there's really only these newspaper clippings to go off of here. I'm not going to go too much farther into the lore, as that's a rabbit hole I'd honestly rather stay away from, but outside of that, that's it. Like I said earlier, FNAF 1 is short, which I think may be why it blew up as hard as it did. It's short, it's easy enough to get through, and on top of that, it has lore to it that just begs to be explored. However, there are still a few gripes I have with this game. For instance, the gameplay here is entirely based on RNG. When the animatronics move, RNG. How long it takes for them to move, RNG. Hell, even apparently how long the hours last is based on RNG. Each hour could take between 86 and 90 seconds to pass, which may not seem like a big thing, but when you're in 2020 mode on the brink of death, those few extra seconds matter more than anything. The worst part is that this over-reliance on RNG opens up a crap ton of problems. For instance, there's a very likely chance an animatronic will get to your door and just sit there for hours, refusing to move. This actually happened to me a few times, and has caused me to die a lot as well. It's really frustrating, and there's literally no way to get around this. Another gripe I have that is honestly quite small is the fact that the 3D effect used in this game looks kinda cheap. Like, it just looks like it's wrapping an image around a curved shape for you to look at. However, like I said, that's more of a small nitpick more than anything, and it doesn't hurt the game really at all in my opinion. The last problem I have is really big though, and it's the fact that, for whatever reason, only one animatronic can appear on a camera at a single time. So even if there's multiple animatronics on a single camera, you'll only see one of them. And this is a major problem for whenever you're looking for a specific animatronic, as if they're in the same room as another animatronic, there's a high likelihood you just won't be able to see them. In the end though, Five Nights at Freddy's is still a pretty good game overall. There's a reason this game kickstarted such a popular and mainstream series, and with its great atmosphere and compelling lore building, it's not hard to see why. As much as people like to dog on the lore of this franchise, I always saw the older games as having some really great hidden lore. There's so much to talk about with this game, including community theories, future games, fan games, and so much more. Honestly, I might talk about some of those in the future, but I don't know. But for now, that's all I had to say about this game. Thanks for watching!